Why is it so hard for you to just rest? Why does simple joy feel fake while working yourself to exhaustion is the only thing that feels normal? Today, we're going to break down exactly why your mind works this way and how one moment changed everything. You're only 8 years old when you realize you have to read the energy in a room before you even dare to open your mouth. You learn that a mother's silence is actually a language you have to master just to stay safe. Peace becomes your full-time job, and having a real childhood is something you watch other kids live from a distance. You didn't grow up too fast because you wanted to. You were pushed into a role no child should ever have to play. It left you with traits most people can't explain. Psychology is only now learning how to name them. If you were the child who had to be an adult before you were ready, this is how that shaped you. Psychology has a name for it: parentification. It's when a child becomes the emotional caretaker for the very adults who are supposed to care for them. When this happens early, it doesn't just hurt. It rewires how your brain understands safety, love, and your worth. And it also gave you some rare qualities. Let's look at what you've become. First, you develop what's called hypervigilant empathy. You can read people with scary accuracy. You walk into a room and within seconds, you know exactly who's upset, who's lying, and who needs to be handled. You didn't ask for this superpower. It was a survival skill you had to learn. While others listen to words, you're reading microexpressions and shifts in tone. You became an expert in unspoken pain because your safety depended on predicting an adult's mood before it exploded. It makes you a great friend or partner, but it's exhausting because you can't turn it off. You're still scanning for threats that aren't even there anymore, managing emotions that were never your job. Second, you're hyper-independent, but not for the reasons people think. You don't ask for help because deep down, you learned that needing someone is dangerous and that being vulnerable leads to being left behind. When you were the one holding the family together, asking for support wasn't an option. So you built walls so high you can't even see over them anymore. Everyone leans on you, but you lean on no one. The truth is, you aren't actually independent. You're isolated. Real independence means being able to rely on others, but you feel like you don't have that choice. Because your childhood taught you that adults aren't safe and that support always comes with strings attached. Third, you carry what I call borrowed maturity. People told you that you were so wise and responsible for your age. But that maturity wasn't something you grew into naturally. It was stolen from the childhood you should have had. You learned to talk, think, and comfort others like a grown-up. But underneath that act, there's still a child who never got to just play, be messy, or make mistakes without feeling the weight of the world. Now, as an adult, you can handle huge responsibilities and pressure, but simple joys feel weird. Being playful feels like a performance, and resting just feels wrong. Your nervous system only knows one setting: on. Sometimes you just end up skipping the life stages you actually needed. You can't go back in time, but you have every right to grieve for what was taken from you. It's in that grief that you start reclaiming the parts of your soul you once left behind. You might notice that your boundaries feel like they're wrapped in guilt. Even now, saying no feels like you're betraying someone. It feels selfish to want a little space for yourself, and putting your own needs first feels like you're abandoning people. This happens because when you were little, your boundaries were constantly pushed aside. Your needs were treated like an inconvenience, and your feelings were seen as too much. You learned how to shrink yourself and accommodate everyone else, making yourself small just so they'd want to keep you around. You literally soak up other people's moods and problems like a sponge, and then you end up resenting them for it, even though you never actually said no. But those boundaries of yours aren't walls, and they aren't a rejection. They're your sacred space where you finally get to just be yourself, without having to perform or fix anyone else. Learning how to hold them without feeling guilty is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's the only way to stop just surviving and actually start living. You carry a special gift. You see the things that other people miss. You understand people on a level that can't be taught in books because you've lived through it yourself. You recognize a silent cry for help even when someone is smiling. You became a translator for other people's pain because you had to translate your own just to stay standing. This makes you quietly and deeply powerful, but you often forget to be a witness for yourself. You don't have to save the whole world. You aren't obligated to understand every person who crosses your path. You have the right to choose yourself first. You can finally take that child you used to be by the hand and be the adult they needed so badly back then. You aren't broken and you aren't too much. You're someone who survived when it felt impossible, and your sensitivity isn't a curse, it's proof that you're still here. The child inside you deserved better, and the person you are today deserves some peace. Healing doesn't mean you have to forget everything. It just means finally letting that child come back home to a place that's safe. You grew up way too fast, but you're still growing. And this time, you get the chance to do it right for yourself. If this sounds like your life, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments. You aren't alone in this.